This is Bette Rogge reporting for Total News in the Spaceport, USA. And here's the gentleman that gave me that title, the very famous author, Martin Caidin. And, Marty, you had a book that was the title Spaceport, right?
It came out about 11 years ago, that's right. That was on the old Cape Canaveral, the Air Force Station, which today is called the Cape Kennedy Air Force Station. And, of course, there's a Kennedy Space Center. And Spaceport, USA was a history of the early days, which is quite a bit different than the crowd and the mob we have here right now. You had to sort of rough it on the hoof in those days and stand on a beach and hope somebody would tell you something. Now the press is sort of curried to. It's a great change from the old times.
Marty, you have flown with a lot of the astronauts. What about the three that are going up on the Apollo 14 flight?
Well, there's Rusa, Mitchell, and Alan Shepard. And Rusa and Mitchell are rookies, but to a certain extent, so is Alan B. Shepard. This is just about 10 years ago that we broadcast his flight on May 5th of 1961 in the old Mercury Redstone 3. And it's hard to realize that the rocket that'll be boosting Alan Shepard for this flight, the first stage alone is equal to 100 the rockets that Shepard flew in back in 1961. Shepard may be a rookie in terms of never having been in orbit, but he's about one of the toughest and the most competent of all the astronauts and yet to fly in space. He's considered a pro, and he is one. He's 47 years old, and I dare say he's in better physical shape than just about anybody else in the program. You might call him Mr. Super Competence. He's not liked by a great many people.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Well, Alan Shepard is his own man, and he goes his own way, and this always rubs people the wrong way. He just really doesn't much care for the things that exist beyond his job and doing the job he's trained to do for the last 12 years. And I happen to think Shepard is one of the more outstanding people I've known in my life. He's determined, he's super confident, and he's about as super normal as you can make a man. Now you don't call a man a Superman, because that's nonsense. Nobody is. But Shepard's about as good as qualified a man as any to make this trip. And of course, Roos and Mitchell, having basically met astronaut qualifications and test pilot qualifications, have got to be about as good as anybody can be.
Flown with the Thunderbirds. You've flown, I know, with Shepard. What about the weather for the Apollo 14 launch?
Looks good. We've got a nice, fat, high-pressure area sitting around here, and it should stay clear. About the only clouds we'll see are actually from the smoke from the sawgrass and muck fires that are taking place in the central part of Florida. But as far as launch goes, we should have a nice, clear day and possibly some winds from the east, which will actually help the launch in terms of the spectators, because it'll bring the sound very clearly from the bird. When the wind blows from the launch pad 39A toward the press site, you will get a much better feeling of the sound than a shockwave.
Marty, you've flown almost every place in the world. Would you like to be going to the moon?
Oh, sure. Why not? It's pretty quiet up there.
Yeah.
It's the strange thing about the moon, after having written all these years on it and talking to Pete Conrad and Alan Bean, the astronauts, instead of finding the moon so bleak and hostile as we all expected it to, and do understand something, though, it's still a world that is totally without life. And you try and think of some place that doesn't have a single blade of grass or dirt or an insect, never been a snowflake, never been any rain, never any wind, never any sound. As alien as one could expect, and a man without the protection of his equipment would die a rather horrible death, and within seconds. And yet, when you consider a man at 100,000 feet in an airplane will die just as quickly, or a man 30,000 feet below the ocean will die just as quickly, you begin to realize that man has always maintained the means of carrying a small shell of Earth with him, which is precisely what we do on the moon, both in the lunar module and in the suit these men wear. And so, within that protective shell they carry to the moon, they found the moon because it has so few surprises. The animals leaping out at them from behind trees that aren't there. No diseases. They found the moon to be rather friendly. You can picture a man like Pete Conrad weighing 150 Earth pounds, wearing nearly 150 pounds of equipment, yet being in a 1/6 gravity environment. Pete was able to, he tripped at one time on the moon and fell and put out one hand, stopped himself, and just pushed down with a spring right back up again to an upright position. So there he was, weighing 300 Earth pounds, doing one-arm push-ups on the moon and having an absolute ball.
Do you think they'll ever colonize the moon? They're talking about
Eventually, yes, I believe they will. Not colonize in the sense that we think of ships carrying passengers to start a new type of life somewhere. but I don't doubt that there will be scientific bases on the moon. There's absolutely no human reason for being in Antarctica, but we have bases there, and I believe we'll do the same with the moon, especially if we ever get our hands on fusion power. I'm not talking about nuclear reactors as we know them today, but the fusion reaction, the thermonuclear reaction, will give us virtually such unlimited energy, and once you have energy, you can colonize anything you want to, except I doubt if we'll go to Venus because of the conditions there. But I have no question that man will set up bases both on the moon and on Mars.
You think they'll take Orson Welles?
I don't think so.
Marty, I want to talk a little bit about your writing career. You've written about 70 books.
That's right.
And what do you think was the most popular?
I got a book called Samurai. Samurai in Japanese, meaning warrior. This is the story of Saburo Sakai, a Japanese pilot who shot down 64 Allied aircraft in World War II, was Japan's second greatest living ace of the war. Number one living ace, but second greatest ace. Samurai came out about 16 years ago. It's still selling with undiminished sales and has been reprinted in about 20 languages. I would submit that Marooned is the best known.
Well, because of the movie, don't you think?
Because of the movie, but I would say that Samurai is far more many copies were sold. It's somewhere up around 7 or 8 million copies now.
Richard Carena was in Marooned. This
Right.
was our station manager's brother-in-law.
Well, he did a great job in that picture.
Oh, he's a fabulous actor. And Gregory Peck was in it, I believe. And
Gregory Peck and Jim Franciscus and Gene Hackman, of course, David Jansen, and they all came through pretty well.
Tremendous cast. Now, how long have you lived here in Cocoa Beach?
Permanently about 7 years, but I've been considered a resident down here for the last 21. I was here for the bumper shot in 1950, right after I got back from the 5th Air Force in Japan. I came down out of the hospital, came down for the shot, and then I worked here as the consultant to the commander of the Missile Test Center back in 54 and 55. And I was here about 4 or 5 months out of every year, and one day I was driving to New York, going to a broadcast in WNEW, for which I used to broadcast. I was on the world's biggest parking lot, which is known as the Long Island Expressway. And I said, I have just got to be clear out of my skull doing this every day. And I turned off at the airport and flew down here, and I didn't go back.
That was it.
That was it.
Marty, wanted to ask you, how about your wife? Does she ride?
No, Diana does not ride at all. She flies. She's just a good-looking broad who enjoys life, keeps me happy, and flies. The care and feeding of Martin Caidin comes first.
Marty, I want to ask you, now, you've fought with a lot of different countries, haven't you?
No, not really. I'm really basically a very friendly fellow. I don't want to fight with nobody.
No,
I've been thrown in jail in a couple of them, but...
No, but haven't you in Spain? I heard some stories about
Well, that was Lisbon in 1961. There was a movie called The War Lover, you may remember. Well, a group of us flew the B-17 bombers to England that were in the film. We had Americans, British, Australians, and we had one Apache Indian. And this was a rather motley crew. When we arrived in Lisbon, Portugal, we were supposed to be in Bordeaux, France, but we had fires and we got lost at sea. And things began to come unglued rather quickly. And it turns out the day we landed in Lisbon, unscheduled, with machine guns and turrets on the airplane, there was an uprising in Africa. A Portuguese liner was mutinied and shanghaied. And we landed, they took one look at us, and that was the end of that, and they threw us all in jail. They took very good care of us when they cleared matter. In fact, they said if our stories had not been so incredible, they said nobody could make this up. They'd have shot us right in the spot. But as it was, they were damn decent about it, really. And we were treated, I would say, exceptionally well. And finally, we became very good friends with the people who arrested us. I've seen them several times since.
Do you fly a lot now, Marty?
Sure do.
Do you travel still all around the world?
I hope to, but I keep on doing it. Sometimes you get married to that mechanical monster called a typewriter, but there's only one way to write a book, of course, and that's to sit down behind a typewriter and move a lot of paper through it. But we travel quite often. We would like to do more than we are doing now.
Do you have a new book that you'd like to plug?
No, I don't believe in plugging books, because I have 7 of them coming out this year.
You're working on 7?
No, these are already written. They'll be published this year.
You only work on 1 at a time.
No, I work on about 3 or 4.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Marty, you're a flyer. Surely you've been up to Dayton, Ohio, the home of aviation.
Anybody in the aviation and space business or aerospace has got to know Dayton because it's one of the bedrocks of the entire business. Going way back to 1946 and the big air races, Cleveland brought us into Dayton. We've had the Aviation Space Writers Association has met there many times. And now, of course, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base would go in there many times. if you're in the business, you're in Dayton. That's all there is to it.
How about the Aviation Hall of Fame?
Well, John Condren, who is one of the men managing the congressional group, asked me to be on the board of nominees, the board of selections, which I consider to be an outstanding honor to be offered this, and I am on that group.
Well, that's wonderful. I know Larry O'Neill is connected with the Aviation Hall of Fame, so we're very happy to hear that, Marty Caidin.
Yeah, you can say hello to Dayton for me if you would. It's an old...
And now this is Bette Rogge reporting from Spaceport, USA with Joe Whistle for the Total News, Channel 7.